You know that moment when you realize someone's got way too much time on their hands? That's exactly what happened when my HOA Karen decided my car was an eyesore and slapped me with a fine for parking in my own damn driveway. I had lived in this neighborhood for a while, and while the HOA had always been a little overbearing, I had never had any real issues. My driveway was a perfectly normal driveway, and my car, a simple, well-maintained sedan, had been parked there countless times before. But apparently something had changed. It all started on a bright Tuesday morning when I stepped outside, coffee in hand, and noticed a bright orange envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. At first, I thought it was just some junk mail or an advertisement, but the moment I saw the HOA letterhead, I knew something was up. The words "Notice of Violation" glared at me in bold, capitalized letters. My stomach dropped. Confused, I skimmed through the text, searching for a reason. Then, there it was. Vehicle does not conform to community aesthetic standards. Immediate removal required. I blinked. Then I read it again just to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. My car? Not conforming. Now, let me be clear, my car wasn't some rusted-out junker. It wasn't falling apart, it wasn't blasting music at all hours, and it sure as hell wasn't parked on my lawn. It was just a regular sedan, parked neatly in my own driveway. Nothing about it screamed eyesore. Yet, here I was, holding a ticket that demanded I either remove my car or start paying $25 per day in fines until I complied. Annoyed, I did what any rational person would do. I went straight to the person responsible. Karen. Karen wasn't just a regular HOA board member. No, she was the HOA dictator, self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, and an absolute nightmare wrapped in pastel-colored blouses and pearl necklaces. If there was an unnecessary complaint to be made, Karen was the one filing it. If a neighbor so much as let their grass grow an inch too long, she was the one who would gently remind them of the HOA's landscaping regulations. She thrived on enforcing ridiculous rules and making people miserable, all under the guise of preserving property values. I marched over to her house and rang the doorbell. Took her all of 5 seconds to answer. She must have been watching from the window like some kind of suburban gargoyle. She opened the door with that same smug, rehearsed smile she always wore when she was about to ruin someone's day. "Ah," she said, arms crossed. "I was expecting you." I held up the violation notice. "What the hell is this?" Karen feigned innocence. "A notice of violation." I gritted my teeth. "I can read, Karen. My car has been parked in my driveway for years without a problem. Why now?" She let out a dramatic sigh, the kind you give when you have to explain something to a toddler. "It has recently come to the HOA's attention that your vehicle does not meet our revised aesthetic standards." I blinked. Aesthetic standards? What does that even mean? It's a regular sedan. Karen's face didn't so much as twitch. "It's an eyesore." I actually laughed. "An eyesore? Are you kidding me? The community is striving for a more uniform, upscale look," she said primly. "Cars left in driveways create clutter." I looked around. There were plenty of other cars parked in driveways, SUVs, sports cars, even an old minivan down the street that had clearly seen better days. "So I guess those are fine?" Karen gave a tight-lipped smile. "Those vehicles complement the neighborhood's image. Yours, unfortunately, does not." I felt my blood pressure spike. "This is ridiculous." She didn't blink. "The fine is $25 per day until the vehicle is moved." Now, $25 a day wasn't enough to bankrupt me, but it was the principle of the thing. This wasn't about rules, it was about Karen flexing her authority. She wanted to remind me that she was in charge, that she had the power to make my life miserable. I took my complaint to the HOA board, thinking surely they'd listen to reason. I was wrong. Sitting across from a panel of middle-aged bureaucrats, I quickly realized Karen had them wrapped around her perfectly manicured finger. No matter what argument I made, they nodded along to her nonsense about aesthetic value and maintaining property values. "This isn't about my car," I said, finally exasperated. "This is about her making up rules as she goes." One of the board members gave a helpless shrug. "The community has spoken." Oh, the community had spoken all right, and I had just decided how I was going to respond. If Karen thought my car was an eyesore, she was about to find out what a real eyesore looked like. I pulled out my phone and called my old buddy Doug. "Hey man," I said, getting straight to the point. "How would you feel about parking your tank in my driveway for a few days?" There was a pause, then an amused chuckle. "What did you do now?" "It's not me. HOA Karen is on a power trip and thinks my sedan is an eyesore. She hit me with a fine just for parking in my own driveway. So I figured, if she thinks my car is bad, let's give her something way bigger to complain about." Doug burst out laughing. "Dude, say no more. I am so in." Doug wasn't just an old friend, he was a military collector. And his prized possession? A decommissioned, fully operational tank. This thing was a beast. Over 10 feet tall, weighing several tons, and painted in full military camouflage. It was the exact opposite of aesthetic conformity. It was loud, imposing, and absolutely guaranteed to send Karen into cardiac arrest. The next morning, as Karen made her usual rounds with her clipboard in hand, she probably thought she had one. My sedan was nowhere to be seen. But then, in the distance, a deep, earth-rumbling growl cut through the quiet suburban streets. The tank rounded the corner. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a rolling declaration of war. I stood at the edge of my driveway, grinning as Doug pulled in and parked the massive steel beast right where my sedan had been. Karen, who had been chatting with another neighbor, turned around, and the moment she saw it, her jaw hit the pavement. The clipboard slipped from her fingers. Her face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. And I swear to God, for the first time in HOA history, Karen was speechless. Karen stood there, frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Her perfectly organized world, her little kingdom of ridiculous rules and aesthetic tyranny, had just been turned upside down. The clipboard she always carried like a badge of honor lay forgotten on the ground, her fingers twitching as if she were mentally composing the HOA violation notice of a lifetime. I casually leaned against the tank, arms crossed, fighting back a smirk. "Morning, Karen," I said, my voice dripping with mock politeness. She snapped out of her trance, jabbing a finger toward the steel behemoth now dominating my driveway. What is that?" I feigned innocence. "Oh, this is my new vehicle. You said my sedan was an eyesore, so I decided to upgrade." Her face contorted in fury. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," I said, patting the side of the tank like it was a beloved family pet. "I took your feedback to heart, Karen. You didn't like my sedan? No problem. I found something bigger, sturdier, and, best of all, way more noticeable." Karen sputtered. This is absurd. You can't park a tank in your driveway." I shrugged. "Funny, I checked the HOA rulebook. Nowhere does it say I can't." Karen's left eye twitched. It's an unreasonable obstruction." I tilted my head. "Unreasonable?" According to HOA regulations, as long as a vehicle is parked entirely within the driveway and doesn't block the sidewalk or street, it's compliant. My tank meets those requirements perfectly. By now, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, whispering and trying, and failing, not to laugh. A couple of them even started recording the spectacle on their phones. Karen, realizing she was quickly becoming a meme in real time, pivoted her strategy. "This is a safety hazard. What if children try to climb it? What if it," she gestured wildly, "accidentally fires?" Couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. "Karen, it's a decommissioned tank. It doesn't fire anything. Unless you think it's going to suddenly develop a mind of its own and start launching shells at the cul-de-sac." "That's not the point," she shrieked, her voice rising to dog whistle levels. "This is a respectable neighborhood. We have standards. And this," she pointed at the tank like it was a wild animal about to attack her, "does not meet them." Doug, who had been silently enjoying the show, finally spoke up. "Actually, lady, this is a piece of military history, a real collector's item. You should be honored to have such a symbol of strength and resilience in your neighborhood." Karen turned her rage toward him. "Who even are you?" Doug grinned. "Oh, I'm just the guy who owns this fine piece of machinery. And guess what? I love sharing it with people. In fact, he turned to the growing crowd, raising his voice. If anyone wants to take pictures with the tank, feel free. A cheer went up. Suddenly, half the neighborhood was lining up to snap selfies with the tank. Parents brought their kids over, lifting them onto the treads while they giggled and posed. Doug even let a few of them climb into the driver's seat. Karen's face was pure horror. This wasn't just a violation of her rules. It was a complete loss of control. The neighborhood she had carefully curated into an HOA dictatorship was slipping through her fingers, and she couldn't stop it. Then, with all the dramatic flair of a villain in a soap opera, Karen spun on her heel and stormed off. "This is far from over," she screeched over her shoulder. I watched her go, grinning. "I sure hope not, Karen. I'm having way too much fun." Karen tries to get the tank towed and fails miserably. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the HOA. Subject line? Urgent. Vehicle violation. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. The email was a long-winded mess, but the gist of it was simple. My oversized vehicle was a hazard and needed to be removed immediately. It cited vague safety concerns, threw around words like community harmony, and ended with the kicker: failure to comply would result in legal action. I cracked my knuckles. "Oh, Karen, you really thought that would work?" I grabbed my phone and replied, "Dear HO, thank you for your concern. I've reviewed the neighborhood bylaws, and there are currently no restrictions on parking a decommissioned military vehicle in my own driveway. Additionally, my vehicle does not obstruct any sidewalks, roads, or driveways and is parked entirely on my private property. If you'd like to propose a new rule regarding oversized vehicles, I'd be happy to participate in a fair community vote. Until then, my tank stays exactly where it is. Sincerely, the guy with the tank. P.S. I've attached some photos of the neighborhood kids enjoying the tank. They seem to love it." Smiley face. I hit send and waited. Karen, predictably, wasn't done. That evening, as I was grilling burgers on my porch, I noticed a tow truck creeping down the street. I tensed. Oh, this was about to get interesting. The tow truck slowed to a stop right in front of my house. Two guys stepped out, one of them holding a clipboard. I walked up to them, playing dumb. "Hey, can I help you?" The guy with the clipboard cleared his throat. Sir, we received a request to tow an unauthorized vehicle from this property." I raised an eyebrow. Unauthorized? According to who? He glanced down at his clipboard. An HOA board member. A lady named Karen. Bingo. I smirked. Hate to break it to you, but you're not towing that. The second guy, who was clearly rethinking all of his life choices, eyed the tank nervously. Yeah. How exactly were we supposed to tow that? Anyway? Clipboard guy sighed. We weren't told it was a tank. I patted the steel exterior. Oh yeah. And fun fact, this thing weighs about 60,000 pounds. You'd need a specialized military vehicle to even think about moving it. The younger tow guy muttered, "Dude, let's just go." Clipboard guy hesitated, then sighed. Yeah, screw this. They climbed back into their truck and took off. As they drove away, I waved at Karen, who was watching from her window like a villain in a bad sitcom. She yanked her curtains shut. I laughed to myself. Oh, Karen, you just declared war, and I'm just getting started. Karen had lost the battle, but she wasn't giving up the war. If anything, the failed tow truck stunt had escalated her desperation. By now, the entire neighborhood was talking about her meltdown, and the video of her reaction to the tank had gone viral on our community's Facebook group. The comments were brutal. HOA Karen just got out Karen'd. I love it. This dude is my hero. Let the tank stay forever. Can we all pitch in and buy a second tank just to see what she does? But while everyone else was laughing, Karen was plotting. And her next move? A full-blown HOA emergency meeting. I got the notice in my inbox the next morning. Mandatory HOA meeting, urgent discussion on neighborhood standards. I almost choked on my coffee. Oh, this was gonna be good. The HOA meeting turns into a roast session. That evening, I arrived at the HOA clubhouse early, taking a seat near the front. Karen was already there, looking smug and clearly convinced that she was about to reclaim her throne. Around her sat the usual HOA board members, most of them tired-looking middle-aged folks who were just here for the free coffee. As the room filled, I noticed something else. A lot of people had shown up, more than usual, and most of them, not Karen's supporters. I grinned. This was about to be a bloodbath. Karen stood up, cleared her throat, and launched into her speech. I'd like to begin by addressing the glaring issue currently plaguing our neighborhood, she said, her voice dripping with authority. This is a respectable community. We have rules for a reason. And yet, certain individuals, she shot a glare in my direction, seem to think they're above those rules. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Let her dig her own grave. She continued, this tank, this monstrous, offensive piece of machinery, has caused disruption, chaos, and complaints from multiple residents. It is a hazard to property values and a stain on the aesthetics of our neighborhood. It must be removed immediately. Karen sat down, clearly expecting thunderous applause. Instead, silence. Then, someone in the back snorted. Another voice piped up, wait, who exactly complained? Karen stiffened. I have received numerous complaints. The same guy in the back laughed. How many, Karen? Because as far as I can tell, most of us love the tank. Karen's face twitched. That's irrelevant. The fact remains that she was cut off by one of the HOA board members, Richard, an older guy who had been on the board forever but never really spoke up. Actually, Richard said, adjusting his glasses, we received over 30 emails in support of the tank. People seem to think it adds character. Karen's face drained of color. Another neighbor raised her hand. Honestly, the tank is the most exciting thing that's happened to this neighborhood. My kids love it. It's like having a real-life museum exhibit on our street. Someone else chimed in. Yeah, and guess what, Karen? Nobody actually likes all these ridiculous fines you keep handing out for aesthetic violations. Maybe instead of worrying about a tank, you should worry about how you've been running this HOA like your own personal dictatorship. Karen's jaw dropped. The floodgates had opened. One by one, neighbors started tearing into her. Remember when you fined me because my mailbox wasn't the right shade of beige? You fined my son for leaving his bike in the driveway for 5 minutes. You tried to get my dog banned because you thought he barked too loud. It was a full-scale rebellion. Karen, realizing she was losing control, tried to salvage the situation. This isn't about me, she snapped. This is about maintaining the integrity of our community. Richard cleared his throat again. Actually, Karen, that brings me to another point. He pulled out a stack of papers. We did some digging, and we found out that you've been pocketing some of the fine money. The room exploded. Excuse me? Are you serious? We've been paying fines so she could fund her power trip? Karen shot up from her chair. That is a baseless accusation. Richard shook his head. No, Karen, it's not. We have the financial records. And as of today, the HOA board has voted to remove you from your position. Silence. Then, applause. The entire room erupted into cheers. Karen's face turned bright red. You can't do this, she screeched. You need me. I am this HOA. Richard sighed. Not anymore. And just like that, Karen was officially dethroned. The final victory. The tank stays, Karen leaves. With Karen gone, the new HOA board wasted no time. They overturned half of her ridiculous rules, refunded fines she had unfairly charged, and officially approved my tank. Yes, the tank was now HOA sanctioned. But the cherry on top. A week later, I got an email from the new HOA president. Subject, Karen is gone. Hey, just wanted to let you know. Karen has officially sold her house. She's moving out of the neighborhood. I think she couldn't handle the fact that she lost control. Cheers, the new HOA. I stared at my screen in disbelief. Karen, leaving? This was better than I could have ever planned. And the best part? The entire neighborhood threw a block party to celebrate. We set up grills, music, and lawn chairs right in front of Karen's old house. Doug parked the tank right in the middle of the street, and dozens of neighbors lined up to take pictures with it. Someone even made a cardboard cutout of Karen's scowling face, and people took turns posing with it. I leaned back against the tank, watching as people laughed, celebrated, and enjoyed their new Karen-free lives. And as the sun set on the greatest HOA rebellion of all time, I realized something. I hadn't just won against Karen. I had changed the neighborhood for the better. And if another Karen ever tried to take over, well, the tank would be waiting. And that, my friends, is how you handle an HOA power trip. If you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, drop your craziest story in the comments. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more insane HOA revenge stories. See you in the next one.